this. Went to the Border Patrol, went out on night patrols, stopped by a lot of different places on our way to Laredo. And so what I had for you was a slideshow presentation with slides, data, and then also a video. So we'll have to save that for another night. I'll just kind of jump in, and I already have my speech written, so I was telling Daniel back here that, well, I'm prepared for another day and won't have to do all that kind of work. Since I did, what I wanted to convey with that particular message was seeing a lot of the sheriffs and the mayors and the council people down in Texas and these border towns. It's very interesting. The majority of them are Democrats, but they very much share our values, and just in talking with them one-on-one, they care about the very same issues we do. So there's a great opportunity for outreach. One of the particular sheriffs down there, his name is Raimundo Del Bosca. We are connected on Facebook now, and I'm always supporting his stuff and his efforts and his hard work in the community. And you'll see him do a lot for local government and bringing these issues to the forefront. One of the things that I wanted to share with you about this trip, and I do look forward to the videos and the slides, is one of the things that we saw there is really at the heart of why I'm even in local government, and that is growing up in a family where we always talked religion and politics at the dinner table, the two things you're not supposed to talk, but what else is there to talk about? I always followed the presidential races, and my family followed presidential politics, and kind of your hopes and dreams for how the nation is going to go gets wrapped up in who is the president of the United States. But a lot of times, what if? What if the president doesn't reflect our values? What if he's taking us in a different direction? And I guess that's at the point where it really started to click for me that all of our answers really cannot be found in Washington, D.C. And it is community by community. And even if you think about, some of the major issues or some of the major initiatives where they say, if you don't Tennessee, if you don't Anderson County, then we will. If there is community by community by community, county by county, that all agrees and we're all making efforts at our local level to do things the right way, together we can stand up and say, no, we're gonna do it this way, and we're gonna continue to do it this way. And if you become isolated, then the federal government can come in, and they have more resources to marshal to come in and make you change your ways, or do something that they do via an executive order. But if we're all united, or there are more of us, it's very difficult for them to spread out 95 counties across the state of Tennessee. And so I wanted to kind of convey that. Local government, another one of the things I was going to mention at the end of this speech, hold on one second, is the main thing that I wanted to share with you all about what is going on at the border. The big issue is drugs and cartels. And, a lot of times we look at this as just folks that are coming into our country. It's not just about the people coming in, it's what they are doing coming in. And the idea that, well, if there's not a wall and there's not control of the border, then there is no secure border. Well, there is a secure border. It's just that the cartel has secured the border. And the cartel picks and chooses and controls every crossing that takes place. And some of the pictures, for instance, that I was going to show you, the area of parks. If a family comes in, the cartels are monitoring the parks along the river, and if you come in with 5 family members in your car, or family and some friends, if there are 5 that come in and you only leave with 4, they know that someone has crossed, and you will aid the cartels. And the big issue, a lot of us hear about a lot now, fortunately we're hearing a lot about, is fentanyl. And fentanyl is really an outgrowth of the entire opioid epidemic. It's been around for a very long time. EMS has used fentanyl for a very long time. For people in extreme pain, that's something that's used. But now it is being abused, it's being manufactured, and a lot of it traces back to China. And that fentanyl is coming in across the border. And so I just wanted to share a couple of books, and this wasn't really a big part of my speech, but if you have not heard of this book, and I've got some extra, I have 4 more at home. If anybody wants one, I'm happy to give you one, or if you want to give me $5 and I'll continue to pay it forward. It's Sam Keone's Dreamland, and then he has a new one called The Least of Us. And if you want to learn about what is going on in our country and how everything started with opiate addiction, and I will say that I think there's a spiritual component to that. I think you look at our area and Appalachia, the South, the Bible Belt, you can't help that if you're a spiritually minded person, you can't help but think this is an attack on our area, because we are strong people of faith, and that makes it, I guess, more impactful. It takes our strength away. But these 2 books are great. This one starts with, Dreamland starts in Ohio, and I love these books because they're very short chapters, and they follow people. They would follow Amira, then they'll go to one of the opiate manufacturers. Then in the next chapter, I'll do a quick skip to what is, the makeup of an opiate, and then it'll go back to another story. And so it's fast paced, but you learn what has happened to our country. So back in kind of the beginning of opiate addiction, and I don't know if you've watched any of the films such as Dope Sick or any of that, a lot of people legitimately took this medicine, and they still do today, for pain. But it was never explained what the true addictive nature is. Anderson County is just now starting to get some of the funds. I know Commissioner Vandergriff and Palmer and Commissioner Isbell are going to be making some decisions what to do with that money. But opiate addiction ended up leading to heroin. And that was more and more infiltration of the cartels into the United States of America. The cartels, it's kind of interesting, there's a great line in there, and I can't remember it exactly, but it's traffickers begin to operate like corporations. And corporations today, in many ways, are operating like traffickers. And the particular trade with heroin is you have your communities that are very, very broke, extremely impoverished, send their sons to the United States to basically be Uber drivers for heroin. They would distribute very small amounts in balloons that they would hold in their mouth. You have one person with a cell phone, one person in a cell phone in a room with his fast food, maybe a couch, maybe a chair, organizing all of the deliveries, and then each driver is only carrying a very small amount. So if there is an arrest, they're quickly back out on the street, or they go back to Mexico. And this has taken place all over our country. What has changed everything, and so I often say that was old school heroin because it was plant-based. It took the community kind of participating. You had the pipeline, you brought the heroin to the United States, then you had all your distributors, your Pizza Hut, your pizza delivery drivers, really. But what has happened now is fentanyl and these chemical components and configurations have changed everything. With some of the plant-based heroin, you actually could trace where the heroin's coming from. You know, it has a footprint, or a fingerprint, so to speak. You know which community it's coming from. With some of the stuff that is changed now, you don't know. There is no way to digitally trace these chemical components. And so I encourage you to read both of these books. They're absolutely fantastic. Heartbreaking. It also shows you what we're up against. I think if you look, if you're watching one of our county commission meetings and you see some of the issues that we are dealing with, whether it's, you know, a juvenile issue or homelessness, a food program, you know, some of the behavior issues in school, a lot of it goes back to these drug-related issues that end up impacting families, breaking homes, creating behavior issues. And now with these new drugs, these new chemical drugs, new meth, they actually, you go from old meth to new meth. They actually talk about new meth. It's creating absolute psychosis. So for instance, I was at a meeting recently with the head of Covenant Health. He has one individual that had been there 35 days, nowhere to send this person, no way to put them back out on the street. He had 45 outreaches to different places where to send him, but because of this level of psychosis, it's beyond mental illness. It's an effect of the drugs. The head of, or the vice president of UT Medical had a patient over 100 days. And the psychotic events, the head of Covenant Health was saying he had to take his wife to the hospital, and the psychotic event of one individual, they're knocking holes in the wall, they're screaming, they're disrupting, and what are we to do with that? And again, it goes back to what's happening at our border and how these drugs are getting into our country. So it's more than just, you know, legal immigration, illegal immigration, migrant workers. This is a full-on attack on our country and each and every community. And one of the things that I believe that we should do, and this is just me, is we should be supportive of those communities and develop relationships. And you know, a lot of times we'll do, for instance, the city of Oak Ridge is sister city with a city in Japan. We should become sister cities and sister counties with some of these border towns, because if they do a better job in Starr County, in Hidalgo County, that's less than you know, impact in our community for some of the drugs and some of the trafficking and human trafficking as well. But I really apologize that my program kind of fell apart. I'll just answer any questions that you may have. I know Myra has some other stuff she'd like to talk about, but I am sincerely sorry. I'm going to make sure that in the future I always have a cable. I guess part of the issue is I have an Apple. So we have PC, and they just did not want to marry up despite best efforts. So I apologize. Any questions? Yes, Harold.
Yes, you get data on number of overdose deaths for Anderson County. I know Knox County yesterday had 21 overdose deaths in 19 days, and I was wondering if you get that, or I don't hear it reported necessarily.
Yes, we do. So we do have a fantastic partnership with Knox Regional Forensic Center. And so it's all, when they do an annual report, it's the Knox Anderson report.
Okay.
Was
Anderson included in that?
I don't know. I did not see that report. I do know, so in 2021, I think, the unofficial was 89, and then sometimes what they do is they have maybe a very long waiting period for when they officially lock those numbers in for fatal overdoses, because you may find out it was a suicide, or once you're waiting for those final labs to come in. So I believe that number for 2021 was 86. We had been going down in Anderson County for fatal overdose up until 2019. Then the COVID pandemic hit, then you started seeing just the complete open border scenario. You had more drugs flowing into the country, and our numbers started shooting up. We went up to the 86 I just mentioned in 2021, but this year, our unofficial numbers, we have come down. And that's a good sign. I think in the 2021 realm, 60 of those were fentanyl related. And you'll hear the terminology fentanyl poisoning. So, for example, there's a dad that reached out to me. He's from Knox County, and his son, he has two sons, and one of the sons was a very excellent athlete, got a back injury, started taking opioids, got a pill. I think he used one of the young people apps that I don't know, I can't remember what it was called, but a lot of times they'll just buy a pill thinking that it's a Percocet or some type of opioid. The two brothers, it wasn't a party situation, it wasn't a getting high situation. They were playing their Xbox, ate pizza. The one brother said, hey, good night. He took his pill to go to bed, and he was dead in the morning. And it is fentanyl poisoning. And I mean, you're finding it show up in everything. Marijuana, it's not just, the hard stuff. They're cutting it into things because it's such a cheap thing to do. And some of your really hardcore addicts that are just really hooked on something, they kind of want to see a little bit in there because it gives a little extra kick. But if you're a one-time user or one-time marijuana smoker, or maybe a couple of times, it's killing people. One of the things we've gotten better at, and fatality isn't always the best gauge for what your community profile looks like in terms of addiction. We've gotten so much better with response. So our EMS is constantly doing response and Narcan and bringing people back. Law enforcement is all equipped with the same thing. Our fire personnel, community volunteers. And then I've also had law enforcement say, you're not going to believe this, but this person's drug dealer gave them, a free dose of Narcan with their buy. And so we even have the drug community also getting in on the Narcan, which is saving people, but it's also not giving us a true measure of what does that addiction look like in our community. But we did come down this year, so that's good. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is, I haven't heard much about the border recently, I guess because the news has been overcome with all this other stuff.
Yes.
But, and I like your idea of sister cities, but I think in terms of, are they still just pouring in? Is it even controlled that would be something that would be, I know it's beneficial, but could it be real beneficial? Because they're controlling how many people are coming in. And the second thing is, do we have a program in our schools, like just say no, like we did for smoking? And that seemed to be very effective when they were saying, don't smoke, and it really took hold, but I don't know what they're doing.
I'm not as familiar with the municipal. I do know the sheriff's department has, I don't know if it's been 2 or 3 years, has cranked up maybe it's always been there, and I'm just seeing more visibility now, but a LEAD program. And then there is Allies for Substance Abuse Prevention, which is a coalition. So I do know that in the schools they are doing programming, and I do know that the schools are that. So for instance, last year, I cannot remember, there was some kind of news story that came out on fentanyl, and I reached out to Dr. Parrott with our Anderson County school system, and we wanted to get to the young people before they got out for the summer. And so County Commission partnered in asking Channel 95 to do a public service announcement. Dr. Parrott provided some funding for ASAP to get up larger posters in the school, letting young people know, we know young people are going to experiment. Not all of them, but there's a greater percentage that will. And so, for instance, in that particular case, they really tried to get that message out that just one time can kill. And that's really what we're up against right now. And then, what was your other question?
The other one is.
The border.
Yeah, are they still pouring in on the border?
I know in some particular areas, they've done a better job. In some, it's just wide open. And when you see the Border Patrol, they are very frustrated. So what I heard when I was on the border was, we've worked for all kinds of presidents, Democrat, Republican. It's never been like this. This is out of control, and they're basically processors. And you just have, we were driving down the road, and here comes a group of people, and we stop, where are you from? They were from Cuba. And the way our Border Patrol responds, their only empowerment is essentially just keep going down the road, and our sign-in station is there, and then we're filling out paperwork and putting them on a bus and hooking them up with the non-government organizations that are contracted to send them to different places throughout the country. So, yes?
I applaud your empathy and courage in trying to get this issue addressed. You're probably going to be the first one to actually do it. You've got the intelligence to handle it, obviously. But I'm curious if the money coming in to the commissioners could potentially be used to interrupt, disable, intercept the cycle of both domestic violence and sex trafficking, in that if Anderson County, I'm aware you've been working on potentially getting a crisis center. Apparently Anderson County is one of the only counties that does not have a domestic crisis center. And so if that money could potentially interrupt these people from enabling the either sex trafficking or domestic assault by keeping the abused there and isolating their predators from manipulating them. If we had that crisis center, we might do a long-term, long-game assessment of how to interrupt that cycle. I'm curious if you have any expertise, being that you've already looked into this kind of thing.
Well, I know we have, there's a Family Justice Center that is also coalition-based and is doing a lot of work in that realm. The county just received a domestic violence court grant that will start Scott County has one of those programs, and basically it would help organize the docket and try to, I guess when I first was speaking with the program managers about it, who manage it from the state of Tennessee level, I'm like, how does this help? And they said, well, essentially, if you can get everybody on the same page to have domestic violence court, if you will, on one day or certain days, you get better response in terms of having victim there, the folks that are going to testify, your officers, and so it's more effective. So I do know that there is a lot of discussion. Whether that is applicable to the opiate funds, I don't know. So the majority of our funds, so for instance, we got a big payment of $425,000. Does that sound right, Shelley? And that one has about 16 pages of limitations. So they really want you to, mitigate direct opiate impact, whether that's some kind of new program or recovery, law enforcement, but somehow get to the heart of the issue there. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, the borders are open and the cartels are pulling the border and the cartels are highly militarized. So is there any talk about using our military to handle this, very violent cartel that they have all the high powered weapons? And so what about getting our military involved down there?
So, this is an area where I'm not very literate, and Jack is recording. So, disclaimer. So, Commissioner Allen, to your point, absolutely. And if anyone has watched the movies Sicario, or is that how you pronounce it? Sicario? It gets to that. The cartels are dealing and acting like military organizations, and we have been fighting them with law enforcement limitations. And so I don't know what's going, I know from a public policy standpoint, even at the federal level, there are all kinds of policy strings or implications of designating them a terrorist organization or something that would allow us to employ a military angle. However, TBI director David Roush, actually I was able to speak to him at one of our EFRA meetings a couple of years ago, and he and I were talking about this very thing, Commissioner Allen, and he came out maybe 8 months ago, give or take, and said that he thinks that they should be designated a terrorist organization, and that would allow us to use stronger tactics against them. Yep. Let me get somebody new. Yes, sir. Chalice.
Does our county or the city have in place a plan if suddenly a busload of migrants show up on our doorstep? What are we gonna do? Is there a plan in place?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
It happens.
Yes.
What Ms. Gilman was talking about, trafficking of children and so forth, it made me think because just within the last week, when I was shopping, I ran into Walmart and I was coming out, and there was a young girl there with an older gentleman, and it didn't look right, and she kind of looked at me, and he was being really rough with her in terms of his tone and telling her what to do. And I really do think she needed my help, but I didn't know what to do. And if you do something sometimes, it makes it worse for that, young gal. There is one, you all might already know this, but someone told me that if this is the symbol for I'm being held against my will, it's your thumb in the palm of your hand. So, I don't know how many, people that are victims know that, but, I wasn't sure what I could do, or who I could tell.
Well, I think you can always call law enforcement, and a lot of times they really will check that out. So if you notice something, and even if for some reason, and I'd say Jack could probably answer this question as a tenured, long time law enforcement officer, it always is a good idea to call just in case, because even if it isn't something that's actionable for them or they're able to check out, there is a record of a call, and you get a couple of calls, then maybe something's there. So, and just kind of not to make light of that very serious situation, but not this year, but the prior year, my granddaughter Nora has a picture of her sitting on Santa's lap, and she's going, and so, we're like, what's going on? Of course, she didn't know that, but it's been a source of family fun. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What was the name of the first book?
Dreamland.
What was the other one?
The Least of Us. So Least of Us gets into the whole fentanyl and meth issue and the new chemical cookers. So Very, very good books.
What was the author's name?
Sam Quinones, and he has a Facebook page, and he travels across the country. Really super reporter. Does an excellent job. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Do you know what any statistics might be about this title theft that's going on? Is that a problem in Tennessee?
What is the?
Title theft?
I think he's talking about register, your, deeds, are you talking about the?
Yeah, in other words, that people get your title information online and fraudulently take out a
Oh,
loan
okay.
against your house, and you're stuck with the bill until you can prove it's justified. Or some places they can actually steal the title online, get it in their name and sell the house.
Wow.
You're not aware of that?
Well, I have just a tiny bit of experience, but I did not realize, in terms of identity theft, and then also just some familiarity with the law in terms of dealing with delinquent taxes, in the mayor's office and with the trustee, we have to kind of have a little knowledge of that, but I was not aware that, it's become rampant apparently from what you're saying, so I will definitely do some research and try to come up with some stats.
Tennessee or not,
Okay.
but, there's a lot of money being made by these, title, I forget what they're selling title protection.
Okay.
Title, yeah.
Okay. Regina?
I don't care to comment a little bit on that. We've had a lot of people come into the trustee's office asking about it because I know there's a lot of commercials out there. And I've talked with Tim Shelton, which is our register of deeds, and in Anderson County, and I think it's that way across the state of Tennessee, but I don't know for sure. I can only speak, from what Tim has said. And I'm sure he would be glad if you wanted to call his office to talk to you about it. But it's not as easy to do as they're trying to make you think it is, because they're really trying to sell you title insurance. They're really trying to play on that fear. And, so from what Tim has told me, it's not near as easy. You can't really go online and turn off someone's deed. It actually has to be, brought into his office and filed, and there's a lot more to it than what the commercial makes it sound. But there again, I'm sure Tim Shelton, which is our register of deeds, would be more than glad to answer any questions for you. Normally he's here, and he's probably,
Just to echo on what Mr. Copeland is saying as well, we do deeds all the time at the office, and they are sworn documents. So if I printed off someone's deed, you have to actually go to, say I printed up a deed saying